I'm Kathleen, 31. At our family dinner, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see me. Instead, a demand landed like a slap across the table, and that night, everything shifted. The clink of silverware echoed through the dining room as laughter filled the air except at my seat. A roast chicken sat steaming in the center, the smell of mashed potatoes drifting up glasses of sweet tea catching the light. I smiled politely, passing dishes while my parents praised my sister's plans for prom, her hair, her limo, her dress. No one asked me a single question about my new campaign at work. I kept my phone face down screen, lighting up from a bank alert I hadn't opened yet. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever been pushed past your limits by family, hit subscribe. You'll want to see how this unfolds. My sister once borrowed my car for an emergency and returned it a week later with a new dent and no apology. Tonight felt like déjà vu. She leaned across the table, bracelets chiming, and whispered just loud enough for our parents to hear, "You'll cover the dress right. It's only $800." My mother's smile was soft but sharp, as if the deal was already sealed. My father carved another slice of meat eyes fixed on his plate. I poured more tea into their glasses, a hostess at my own table, my jaw tightening. Their talk floated above me, prom colors, flowers, music, while I folded my napkin again and again, a crease deepening under my fingers. The bank alert glowed on my phone like a small, waiting flame. Across the table, my sister scrolled on her phone, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light. My mother's hand rested on her shoulder, a small pat of approval. I sat at the edge, invisible but essential. Forks clinked, laughter rose and fell, and I kept refilling drinks unnoticed. She reached for my arm, voice syrupy but expectant. "It's just one night, Kathleen. You've always helped before." The words were practiced like lines from a play. My father cleared his throat. "She's young. Let her enjoy it." They didn't look at me, just assumed. I picked up my glass, steady hands hiding a pulse that had started to race. "We'll talk about it later," I said softly. Inside, a flicker of steel caught light. In the kitchen, I set the empty serving tray on the counter, the cool granite under my palms grounding me. Through the doorway, I could see my sister laughing, my parents nodding along. My phone buzzed again, another notification. I didn't open it yet. I just stood there, napkin still in my hand, feeling the weight of the evening settle like a stone. I dried my hands on the napkin, the cloth still warm from my grip, and stepped back into the dining room. The scene hadn't changed, my sister glowing under their attention, my parents leaning in, their voices full of plans that didn't include me. I slipped quietly into my chair, feeling the wood press against my back, the smell of roast chicken now heavy instead of comforting. They spoke as if I wasn't there. "We'll need to book the limo soon," my mother murmured. "Kathleen can transfer the money tonight." My father nodded without looking up. My sister smirked, scrolling a text open on her screen that I could read upside down, "Send me $2, $800 for prom." The words blurred for a second before sharpening again. I reached for my glass, the cool water steadying my fingers. No one noticed. The bank alert still pulsed on my phone, now hidden under my napkin. My sister lifted her wrist, showing off a new charm dangling from her bracelet. "It's her right," my mother said like a refrain. In that moment, I remembered being 16, begging for $50 for a school trip and hearing, "We can't afford it." Now the same mouths easily promised thousands for a dress my sister would wear once. The memory flickered like a flashbulb, and then was gone. I refilled my own glass and looked at them across the table. Their laughter softened, unsure, as if they sensed the change in the air. My phone buzzed again, a small tremor against the table. I didn't reach for it. I folded my napkin instead, crease by crease, as their conversation drifted back to limos and hair appointments. My sister glanced up briefly, met my eyes, then looked away, cheeks flushed. My mother filled the silence with more details about flowers. My father tapped his watch as though time itself belonged to them. I sat back watching, saying nothing, the flicker of steel inside me now a steady glow. When dessert came, I excused myself with a polite smile, carrying plates to the kitchen. The clatter of silverware faded behind me. In the quiet, I opened the fridge just to feel the cool air my reflection caught in the stainless steel, calm, face-clenched jaw. The phone buzzed again. I still didn't open it. I just let it buzz my hand resting flat on the counter, the sound like a metronome to my thoughts. I knew this night would mark something. They didn't know it yet, but I could feel the shift quiet, but certain like a tide turning beneath still water. By dessert, the air felt thicker, as if the warm smell of pie and coffee had turned into a blanket pressing down on my shoulders. I stayed at the edge of the table, watching my family talk around me, their words sliding past like a stream I wasn't part of. My sister balanced her phone on her palm nails, clicking against the screen. She tilted it so I could see a message already typed. "Send me $2,800 for prom. No question mark, no please." My mother poured coffee into my father's cup and said softly, "We should book the limo tonight." My father nodded eyes on his mug. "Kathleen can transfer it after dinner." He didn't even look at me when he said my name. My sister's lips curled into a small, satisfied smile. The bank alert pulsed again on my phone under the napkin. I kept my hands folded. They whispered about fittings and flowers. My mother leaned closer to my sister, brushing a crumb from her sleeve, her hand lingering in a way it had never lingered on me. "It's her right," she murmured. The words cut sharper than any demand. I reached for my glass, feeling the cool water against my fingers, and let their voices wash over me. When I was 16, I'd begged for $50 for a school trip and been told we can't afford it. That memory flickered like a slide in a projector as I listened to them promise thousands without blinking. I pressed the rim of the glass to my lips and stayed quiet. A faint chime interrupted their conversation. My sister put her phone on speaker by mistake, and I heard her voice from an earlier voicemail. "Mom, Dad, Kathleen's being impossible. Tell her to pay." The room paused for a beat before my mother's text arrived on my screen. "Pay for your sister's prom or don't bother calling yourself part of this family." Seconds later, my father's message, "Do the right thing, Kathleen." The words glowed on my phone, harsh and cold. I looked at them, but they didn't look back. My sister scrolled again, her diamond bracelet slipping down her wrist. My father stirred his coffee. My mother cut another slice of pie. I folded my napkin once more, a crease deepening under my thumb. Inside, the flicker of steel had become a steady glow. I placed my fork down the metal, ringing softly against the plate, and pushed my chair back an inch. Nobody noticed. My parents kept talking about deposits and deadlines, my sister scrolling as if she were already at the party. The bank alert pulsed once more under my napkin, but I left it unopened, a small ember I refused to touch yet. Their voices overlapped in a low hum. "She's always been the responsible one," my mother said, not lowering her tone. My father answered with a grunt, eyes on his pie. My sister's laugh was thin and rehearsed. The words settled like dust around me, building layer by layer until the room felt smaller. I gathered the dessert plates, my movements slow, deliberate. In the kitchen, I rinsed them under cold water, the sound a steady hiss that drowned out the noise from the dining room. My reflection stared back at me from the window, calm face, jaw tight, shoulders squared. Behind me, their voices blurred, then sharpened as another notification buzzed on my phone. I dried my hands and walked back in, sliding the phone into my pocket. My sister's eyes flicked up to mine and then away. My mother filled the silence with more plans. My father tapped his watch as if time itself belonged to him. I returned to my seat, folded the napkin again, and let the silence stretch. Inside, something shifted. The flicker of steel had become a steady flame, quiet but undeniable. I didn't argue, didn't explain. I simply sat there listening to the hum of their entitlement, feeling the shape of a decision forming. The spoon in my sister's saucer slipped and clinked on the hardwood floor, the only sound as I breathed in and out, slow and measured. They didn't know it, but the tide had already turned. I picked up my glass, sipped, and looked at each of them in turn. None of them met my gaze. The alert buzzed again like a drumbeat under the table. I still didn't reach for it. I just let it buzz my hand, resting flat, steady as stone. The next morning, sunlight poured across my desk, turning the papers there into bright squares. My phone buzzed again. This time I opened the alert and saw it clearly: another large withdrawal from the joint account. The numbers blurred for a heartbeat and then sharpened like glass. Every charge lined up in my mind: the bracelet, the limo, the endless emergencies, all paid for with my money. I reached for my coat, slipped the folder of bank statements inside, and texted Ellen, my friend from down the hall. "Can we talk? It's urgent." She replied within minutes, a simple "come over." In her office, she opened her laptop while I handed her the credentials. Her fingers flew over the keys. "There are multiple large withdrawals," she murmured, brow furrowing. "Credit cards, a car loan, even a second mortgage." I leaned closer, stomach twisting. "What about smaller payments?" She scrolled, eyes narrowing. "High-end stores, restaurants, even a prom planner." The words landed like stones. All those years I thought I was helping with necessities. Instead, I'd been bankrolling their lies. I sat back, my pulse steadying the flicker of steel inside me, now a steady flame. That evening I drove to my parents' house. The sky was fading pale blue, turning to gray streetlights humming on. My hands gripped the wheel, the folder heavy beside me. Inside the living room, my mother sat on the couch, eyes already narrow. My father stood by the window, arms crossed. My sister slouched in an armchair, staring at her phone, pretending not to notice me. I didn't sit. I placed the folder on the coffee table and flipped it open, pages fanning out like a deck of cards. "I know everything," I said quietly. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Their heads turned toward the papers, numbers printed in neat rows. My sister's phone slid from her hand and landed softly on the cushion. My father stepped forward. "You don't understand, Kathleen. Debts pile up. You were supposed to help us." My mother's face crumpled, but not with guilt. "How could you dig into our private business? This is family." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were still sharp. My sister stayed silent, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the floor. I tapped a highlighted line with my finger. $100,000. That's what you've taken. This ends tonight." My voice stayed steady. My father blinked. My mother drew in a breath as if to speak, but no words came. The only sound was the rustle of papers as I closed the folder again. My father's hand hovered over the papers as if he could sweep them back into secrecy. "We did this for your sister," he said, voice tightening. "Her future." My mother's tears slid down her cheeks, but her tone cut sharp. "You're so selfish, Kathleen. After all we sacrificed." I watched their words crumble in the space between us, each excuse thinner than the last. I pointed at my sister. "And you?" I asked quietly. She still wouldn't look up. The silence around her was thicker than any accusation. She had grown used to being defended, sheltered by their voices. That silence cut deeper than all their protests. I straightened the folder, stacking the pages with slow precision. "I closed the account," I said. My voice didn't waver. "No more money? You're on your own now?" My mother gasped, clutching her chest like I'd struck her. My father's jaw tightened. My sister's eyes finally lifted, flashing panic but no apology. "You can't walk away from us," my father snapped, stepping closer. "We're your family. You owe us." The audacity burned hot in my throat, but I didn't raise my voice. "I don't owe you anything," I said. "You abandoned me first." The room seemed to shrink, air thick with their disbelief. My mother shouted about loyalty, my father accused me of betrayal, and my sister just sat frozen, her phone forgotten. I gathered the documents, slipping them back into the folder, my hands steady now. As I moved toward the door, their voices rose behind me, a chorus of anger and desperation. I didn't turn back. The front hallway was dim-lined with family photos, but in that moment, they felt like someone else's memories. I reached for the doorknob, paused just long enough to let the weight of their words settle and slide away. Then I stepped out, closing the door with a soft click. No slam, no dramatic exit, just a quiet finality. Inside, the murmur of their arguments faded. Outside, the night air was cold and clean, and for the first time in years, I breathed without the taste of their demands on my tongue. Weeks passed like a long exhale. The calls stopped, the texts grew cold, and then silent. My phone no longer lit up with demands or guilt-laced messages. At first it felt strange, like stepping out of a storm into an empty room, but each quiet morning reminded me I'd finally set myself free. Through a distant cousin, whispers reached me. My parents had filed for bankruptcy. The house in Lincoln, the one they'd sworn was nearly paid off, had been seized. I pictured movers hauling furniture past the porch I'd grown up on, my mother's tears, my father's vacant stare. Part of me ached at the thought, not triumph, just a dull sadness. They had built this mess with my money, cushioning their fall. Without it, reality had caught up. My cousin also mentioned my sister. Without my parents' handouts, she'd taken a part-time job at a clothing store folding shirts and ringing up customers. The girl who once demanded 2 $800 prom dresses, now learning to earn her own. I didn't reach out. I didn't post about it. I simply went on with my life, steadying my career-building savings, showing up to therapy appointments where I unpacked the years of manipulation. Each session chipped away at the guilt that had been wrapped around me like a chain. My therapist reminded me that setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. Nights were quieter. I cooked for myself without glancing at my phone. I walked home from work with no dread of another emergency call. The air felt lighter. I began to recognize my own reflection in the mirror again, someone who no longer measured her worth by how much she could sacrifice. One Sunday afternoon, I found myself driving past the old neighborhood. The trees lining the street were still there, but the house was empty, windows dark. I didn't stop. I just slowed long enough to take in the silence. No voices, no demands, just an address stripped of power over me. At home, I opened my journal and wrote down everything I'd learned. Family doesn't mean obligation. Love shouldn't come with a price tag. I thought of Kathleen a year ago, sitting at the family dinner table, swallowing her pain, and the Kathleen now quiet, steady, not needing to announce her freedom to anyone. I began to share small pieces of my story online, not as revenge, but as a way to connect. Women wrote back telling me they saw themselves in my words. Some had cut ties with toxic relatives, others were still in the middle of it. Each message felt like a hand reaching across the table I'd once sat at alone. In those messages, I realized something: my public reckoning wasn't about shaming them. It was about reclaiming my own life, showing others it was possible to step out of a cycle without screaming, without spectacle. I could nod, close the door, and walk away. As autumn crept in, I felt lighter. Setting boundaries had cost me the illusion of family, but given me real peace. I wasn't waiting for an apology or a dramatic reunion. I'd made my choice at that dinner, and every day since had been proof I could live it. I put down my pen, breathed, and smiled, not at them, but at myself. The door closed behind me long ago, yet its echo still hangs in the air like a quiet bell. I didn't win or lose. I simply stepped out. Sometimes the most powerful move is a calm exit, a boundary drawn with grace. In silence, dignity grows and freedom feels like breathing again.